Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Perfect Facade. Victor Holt adjusted his tie in the hallway mirror, the same routine he'd followed for 8 years of marriage. To anyone watching, he was the epitome of suburban success, a quiet, methodical man who worked in private security consulting. His neighbors in the affluent Riverside district knew him as the devoted husband who never missed his daughter Emma's soccer games, the man who grilled on weekends and maintained the most pristine lawn on Maple Street. What they didn't know was that Victor's consulting work involved extracting information from people who preferred to keep secrets buried. His military background in psychological operations had translated seamlessly into civilian life, though he'd never shared those details with Rebecca, his wife of 12 years. She believed he'd been a desk analyst, nothing more. The morning sunlight filtered through their colonial home's windows as Victor prepared for another day of maintaining his carefully constructed life. Rebecca descended the stairs, her auburn hair cascading over her silk blouse, looking every inch the successful real estate agent she'd become. At 34, she'd retained the beauty that had first caught his attention at a college party, but something in her green eyes had shifted over the past 6 months. "Coffee's ready," she said, not meeting his gaze as she gathered her files from the kitchen counter. "Thank you." Victor studied her movements, noting the slight tremor in her hands, the way she avoided physical contact. His training had taught him to read micro-expressions, and Rebecca was broadcasting guilt like a radio tower. 14-year-old Emma bounded into the kitchen, her dark hair, Victor's hair, pulled back in a ponytail. "Dad, can you pick me up from practice today? Mom has that late showing." "Of course, sweetheart." Victor kissed the top of her head, watching Rebecca's face carefully. Another lie. Rebecca had no showings scheduled for the evening. He checked her company's system 2 weeks ago when his suspicions first crystallized. After Rebecca left with a hurried goodbye and Emma caught her bus, Victor made his own departure. But instead of heading to his downtown office, he drove to a residential street 3 miles away and parked across from a modest townhouse. Trevor Mills emerged right on schedule, locking his door and walking to his silver sedan. Victor had been conducting surveillance for 2 weeks now, documenting Trevor's routine with military precision. The man was Rebecca's age, divorced, and worked as a marketing director for a boutique firm. What made him interesting wasn't his unremarkable career or his average looks. It was how Rebecca's Tuesday and Thursday late showings coincided perfectly with Trevor's early departures from work. Trevor Mills was everything Victor wasn't: talkative, expressive, the kind of man who wore his emotions on his sleeve. Victor had watched them together through telephoto lenses, seen the way Rebecca laughed at Trevor's jokes, touched his arm, looked at him the way she used to look at Victor before familiarity bred contempt. Victor's phone buzzed with a text from his actual work. A client needed information extracted from a former business partner suspected of selling trade secrets. It was the kind of job that required psychological pressure, patient manipulation, and ultimately complete psychological breakdown of the target. Victor excelled at such work. As he drove toward downtown, Victor began formulating a different kind of extraction. Rebecca and Trevor had committed the ultimate betrayal, and betrayal, in Victor's worldview, demanded consequences. Not divorce court consequences or emotional confrontations. Real consequences that would teach them what happened when someone made the mistake of deceiving a man like Victor Holt. The plan began forming in his mind as he walked into his sparse office building. Rebecca thought she was clever, conducting her affair while maintaining the facade of their marriage. Trevor probably felt like he was stealing something precious from an unsuspecting husband. They both believed Victor was weak, oblivious, someone they could manipulate and deceive. They had no idea that their greatest mistake wasn't the affair itself. It was choosing to betray a man whose profession was destroying people who try to hide their secrets. Chapter 2. Buried Histories. Victor's office occupied the 15th floor of a downtown high-rise, deliberately unremarkable except for its state-of-the-art security system. His legitimate consulting work provided excellent cover for the more specialized services he offered to clients who needed problems to disappear permanently. The military hadn't just trained him in psychological operations. They'd shaped him into something far more dangerous than Rebecca could imagine. His secretary, Linda Kowalski, was a 60-year-old former CIA analyst who understood the importance of discretion. She handed him a thick file as he entered. "Your 3 p.m. appointment confirmed," she said. "Background materials are complete." Victor nodded, but his mind wasn't on business. He was thinking about Rebecca's history, details she'd shared during their courtship that now took on sinister significance. She'd grown up in foster care after her parents died in a car accident when she was 8. No extended family, no deep roots, perfect for someone who might need to disappear. Her ambition had always impressed him. Now he wondered if it masked something more calculated. The phone rang. Rebecca's voice, artificially sweet. "Honey, I'll be late again tonight. The Patterson showing is running long." "Of course it is," Victor replied, making notes on a pad. The Pattersons had closed on their house 2 weeks ago. "Don't wait up." After hanging up, Victor accessed his private files and pulled Rebecca's complete background check from before their marriage. He'd been thorough then, but not suspicious. Now, he studied it with professional interest. Rebecca had briefly attended college with someone named Trevor Mills before transferring schools. They'd known each other for 15 years, not the few months she'd claimed when she mentioned him in passing. Victor's training had taught him that people rarely committed betrayal on impulse. This affair had been orchestrated, planned, possibly from the moment Trevor reappeared in their city 18 months ago. Rebecca hadn't fallen into temptation. She deliberately sought it out. His next call was to Marcus Delacroix, a former military colleague who now ran security for the city's police department. Marcus owed Victor several favors from their overseas work together. "I need a comprehensive background on someone," Victor said when Marcus answered. "Trevor Mills, marketing director at Pinnacle Creative. Personal or professional?" "Both." "And Marcus, dig deep. I want to know what he doesn't want people to know." Within hours, Marcus had provided a complete dossier. Trevor Mills wasn't just Rebecca's former college acquaintance. He was her former boyfriend. They dated for 2 years before she transferred schools, supposedly to focus on her real estate studies. But academic records showed she'd been suspended for cheating on exams, using Trevor as her source for stolen test materials. More interesting was Trevor's recent history. His divorce hadn't been amicable. His ex-wife had accused him of psychological manipulation and financial deception. Court records detailed a pattern of behavior. Trevor would identify married women with successful husbands, seduce them, then gradually extract financial information and emotional dependency before moving on to the next target. Rebecca wasn't Trevor's victim. She was his accomplice. Victor felt the familiar coldness settle over him, the same emotional shutdown that had served him well in interrogation rooms and combat zones. This wasn't just adultery. It was a calculated assault on his life, his family, his carefully constructed world. Rebecca and Trevor had looked at his success, his stability, and decided to take what they wanted while destroying what they couldn't have. That evening, Emma returned from soccer practice full of excitement about an upcoming tournament. Victor helped her with homework, made dinner, and maintained a routine of normalcy while mentally cataloging every asset, every vulnerability, every pressure point in Rebecca and Trevor's lives. When Rebecca finally came home at 11 p.m., her hair slightly mussed and her lipstick gone, Victor was waiting in his study. "How was the showing?" he asked without looking up from his book. "Challenging. The buyers are very particular." Rebecca's voice carried a note of nervous energy, the adrenaline of deception poorly concealed. "I'm sure they are." Victor closed his book and studied his wife's face. 12 years of marriage, and he'd never truly seen her until now. "Rebecca, do you remember when we first met? You told me you'd never lie to me." Something flickered in her eyes, fear, perhaps, or guilt. "Of course I remember. Why would you bring that up?" "Just thinking about promises," Victor said, rising from his chair. "And what happens when people break them?" Rebecca started to respond, then seemed to think better of it. She muttered something about being tired and headed upstairs, leaving Victor alone with his thoughts and his plans. The game had begun, but Rebecca and Trevor didn't know they were playing yet. Soon, they would learn what happened when someone tried to deceive a man whose life's work was destroying people foolish enough to think they could outsmart him. Chapter 3. The Network Titans. 3 weeks into his investigation, Victor had transformed his home office into a war room. Hidden cameras provided complete surveillance of their house, Trevor's townhouse, and the hotel where they conducted their trysts. Audio devices captured their conversations, their plans, their casual discussions about Victor's predictable schedule and trusting nature. What emerged from the surveillance painted a picture far more sinister than simple adultery. Rebecca and Trevor had been planning for months to manipulate Victor into a position where Rebecca could claim half his assets in a divorce, plus alimony and child support. They'd researched his business dealings, looking for anything they could use against him. Trevor had even suggested ways to trigger Victor's supposed anger issues to strengthen Rebecca's case. They had no idea that Victor's legitimate business was worth far less than his illegitimate operations, or that documenting their conspiracy was child's play for someone with the skills. The turning point came on a Thursday evening when Victor followed Rebecca to Trevor's townhouse. Through high-powered surveillance equipment, he watched them in Trevor's living room, planning their next moves with the casual cruelty of predators discussing prey. "He's so fucking naive," Trevor laughed, pulling Rebecca closer on his couch. "Yesterday, he actually thanked me for being such a good friend to you during your stressful time at work." Rebecca smiled, but Victor detected something forced in her expression. "Sometimes I feel bad about Emma. She really loves him." "Kids are resilient," Trevor replied, his hand moving to Rebecca's thigh. "She'll be fine. Besides, the custody arrangement means you get his money and he gets weekend visits. Best of both worlds. What if he fights it?" "With what?" "You've been documenting his emotional distance for months. His work schedule, his focus on business over family. Any judge will see you the better parent. Plus, if he gets difficult, we can always suggest he's been psychologically abusive. Your word against his." Victor felt the familiar calm that preceded violence, the emotional stillness that had made him effective in situations where other men would lose control. Rebecca and Trevor weren't just betraying him. They were conspiring to destroy his relationship with Emma, the one pure thing in his life. That night, after Rebecca returned home with her usual lies about late showings, Victor made his first move. He placed a call to an old contact in military intelligence, a man who specialized in creating untraceable documentation and digital breadcrumbs. "I need a ghost," Victor said when the connection secured. "Someone with a history of stalking, assault, domestic violence. Someone scary enough to make 2 targets believe they're in real danger." "How real do you want the danger to feel?" "Real enough that they'll call the police. Real enough that they'll trust me to protect them." Within 48 hours, Victor had a complete identity. Danny Torino, a supposedly violent ex-convict with a history of stalking married women and attacking their lovers. Danny's criminal record was perfectly crafted, his psychological profile suggesting an escalating pattern of violence that would terrify anyone who discovered they were his target. The beauty of the plan was its simplicity. Rebecca and Trevor would soon discover that Danny Torino was following them, threatening them, watching their every move. They would be so grateful when Victor, with his security consulting expertise, offered to help protect them from this dangerous stranger. They would never suspect that Danny Torino was a fiction, that every threat, every dangerous encounter, every reason to fear was orchestrated by the man they betrayed. Victor spent the weekend with Emma, taking her to movies and buying her new soccer equipment, creating memories that would matter when the inevitable custody battle began. She was everything good in his life, and he would protect her from the destruction he was about to unleash. On Monday morning, as Rebecca prepared for another late showing and Emma left for school, Victor activated Phase 1 of his plan. Trevor Mills was about to discover that some prey fought back, and Rebecca was about to learn that her devoted husband was something far more dangerous than the naive fool she'd taken him for. The war room was complete, the battlefield chosen. Now it was time to introduce Rebecca and Trevor to Danny Torino, and through him, to consequences they'd never imagined possible. Chapter 4. The Ghost Emerges. Danny Torino's first appearance was subtle, a shadow at the edge of Trevor's peripheral vision as he left work Tuesday evening. Victor, positioned 2 blocks away with professional surveillance equipment, watched Trevor pause uncertainly before continuing to his car. The seed of paranoia had been planted. 3 days later, Trevor found his apartment building's mailbox area vandalized, with one specific message spray-painted in red: "I'm watching you, Trevor." The building's security cameras had mysteriously malfunctioned that night, a simple matter for someone with Victor's technical skills. Rebecca noticed Trevor's growing nervousness during their Thursday rendezvous. Victor listened through surveillance equipment as Trevor explained about the strange incidents, the feeling of being watched, the vandalism. "Maybe it's just random," Rebecca suggested, but her voice carried new tension. "It felt personal," Trevor replied. "Like someone knows my name, my routine." Victor allowed a week to pass before escalating. Danny Torino's next appearance was more direct. A photograph slipped under Trevor's apartment door, showing Trevor and Rebecca entering the hotel they favored. On the back, in block letters, "Cheaters always pay." This time, Trevor called the police. Victor monitored the police frequency, listening as Detective Angela Santos took Trevor's statement about potential stalking. Trevor described the incidents as harassment from an unknown source, possibly connected to his recent divorce. Victor's law enforcement contacts ensured Detective Santos received an anonymous tip about Danny Torino's release from prison and his pattern of targeting adulterous couples. The fictional criminal record was detailed enough to convince any investigator that Trevor and Rebecca had attracted the attention of a genuinely dangerous predator. Detective Santos advised Trevor to avoid patterns, vary his routine, and notify police immediately of any further contact. She also suggested he inform any romantic partners about the potential threat. That evening, Trevor called Rebecca with the news. Victor listened from his home office as Rebecca's voice pitched higher with each detail. "A stalker? Trevor, this is serious. What does he want?" "I don't know. The detective says this guy has a history of escalating behavior. Physical assault, property damage. Rebecca, maybe we should cool things for a while." "No." Rebecca's response surprised both Trevor and Victor. "We're not letting some psychopath control our lives. But maybe I should tell Victor. He has security experience. Maybe he could help." Victor smiled at the irony. Rebecca was about to invite him into the very conspiracy she'd been conducting behind his back. The next evening, Rebecca approached Victor with carefully rehearsed concern. "Honey, I need to tell you something. My friend Trevor is being stalked by some ex-convict. He's scared, and I'm worried about Emma's safety if this person finds out Trevor and I are friends." "What kind of stalking?" Victor asked, his voice perfectly modulated to suggest professional interest rather than personal suspicion. Rebecca provided details, emphasizing Trevor's fear and her own concern about this dangerous criminal who might target anyone associated with Trevor. She asked if Victor could provide security advice, possibly meet with Trevor to assess the threat. "Of course," Victor replied. "I'll call him tomorrow. We can't have you and Emma at risk because of some unhinged criminal." That night, Victor refined the next phase of his plan. Soon, he would meet Trevor face to face, not as the betrayed husband he actually was, but as the security expert whose help they desperately needed. He would guide them deeper into paranoia while positioning himself as their protector. The irony was exquisite. Rebecca and Trevor would soon trust their lives to the very man they conspired to destroy, never realizing that their greatest threat wasn't Danny Torino. It was Victor Holt himself. Danny Torino was just getting started, and his next visit would convince Rebecca and Trevor that they needed protection only Victor could provide. The trap was almost complete. Soon it would be time to spring it. Chapter 5. The Protector's Gambit. Victor's first meeting with Trevor took place at a downtown coffee shop, chosen specifically for its multiple exit points and extensive surveillance blind spots. Trevor arrived 15 minutes early, clearly nervous, checking over his shoulder and jumping at sudden sounds. Victor entered precisely on time, observing Trevor's heightened anxiety with professional interest. "You must be Trevor," Victor said, extending his hand with the confident grip of someone accustomed to command. "Rebecca told me about your situation. I'm sorry you're dealing with this." Trevor's relief was visible. "Thank you for meeting me. I know you don't really know me, but Rebecca speaks so highly of you. She says you're the best security consultant in the city." "I try to help when I can," Victor replied, settling into his chair with the relaxed posture of someone comfortable with violence. "Tell me about these incidents, starting from the beginning." For the next hour, Victor led Trevor through a detailed recounting of Danny Torino's harassment campaign. He took careful notes, asked probing questions about timing and methodology, and gradually built Trevor's confidence that he was speaking with someone who understood predatory behavior. "This pattern is textbook escalation," Victor concluded, tapping his pen against his notepad. "Your stalker is testing boundaries, building psychological pressure before moving to direct confrontation. The fact that he knows about Rebecca suggests he's been conducting extended surveillance." Trevor's face paled. "What kind of direct confrontation?" "Physical assault, property destruction, potentially targeting family members or romantic partners. Men like this," Victor paused, letting the implication settle. "They don't stop until they're stopped. What do you recommend?" Victor leaned forward, his voice dropping to the confidential tone he'd perfected during interrogations. "First, we need to document everything for law enforcement. Second, we need to control the variables he might exploit. Third, we need to be prepared for him to escalate." Trevor nodded eagerly. "Whatever it takes. Rebecca's scared, and I can't live looking over my shoulder forever. I'll need to meet with Rebecca, get her perspective on the timeline. This stalker might have been watching both of you longer than you realize. Can you arrange that?" "Of course. Tonight, if possible." Trevor caught himself. "She has a late showing, but afterward we could meet." Victor made a note, as if recording Trevor's scheduling information rather than catching his near confession about their planned rendezvous. "Perfect. And Trevor, don't vary your routine too dramatically. Sudden changes might trigger him to act more aggressively. Maintain normal patterns, but stay alert." That evening, Victor arrived at the designated restaurant where Trevor and Rebecca were waiting. Watching Rebecca interact with Trevor in person, seeing her touch his arm and lean close during conversation, confirmed every detail of his surveillance. But now she was performing a different role, the concerned friend seeking help for her stalking victim. "Victor, thank God you're here," Rebecca said, standing to embrace him with what appeared to be genuine relief. "This whole situation has me terrified for Emma's safety." Victor's analysis of Rebecca's performance was professionally impressed. She'd crafted a narrative that positioned her relationship with Trevor as innocent friendship, while expressing realistic concern about the threat to their family. If he hadn't known the truth, he might have believed her completely. "Rebecca, I need you to think carefully about anyone who might have seen you with Trevor," Victor said, settling into his chair. "Coffee shops, restaurants, business meetings. This stalker has to be getting his information somewhere." For an hour, Victor guided them through a detailed recreation of their activities over the past month. Under the guise of security analysis, he extracted a complete timeline of their affair while positioning himself as their protector and confidant. "Based on what you've told me," Victor concluded, "this stalker has been watching you for at least 6 weeks. He knows your routines, your meeting places, possibly your home addresses. We need to assume he's planning something significant." "What kind of something?" Rebecca asked. "Home invasion, workplace confrontation, or targeting family members. Men like Danny Torino view adultery as a personal affront requiring punishment." Trevor started. "How did you know his name?" Victor smiled slightly. "I made some calls after our meeting. Danny Torino, 34, recently released from Millfield Correctional. History of assault, stalking, domestic violence. He fits the profile perfectly." Rebecca grabbed Victor's hand. "What do we do?" "You trust me to handle it," Victor replied, his voice carrying absolute certainty. "I'm going to set up protection protocols for both of you. Round-the-clock surveillance, controlled communication channels, and, if necessary, direct intervention." Trevor looked confused. "Direct intervention?" Sometimes the only way to stop a predator is to remove him from the equation permanently, Victor said, meeting Trevor's eyes with the cold gaze that had broken stronger men than him. Don't worry. I know how to handle men like Danny Torino. As they prepared to leave, Rebecca kissed Victor's cheek with what appeared to be genuine gratitude. I'm so lucky to have you protecting us. Victor smiled, returning her embrace while mentally cataloging every detail of her deception. Soon, Rebecca and Trevor would learn exactly what kind of protection he provided to people who betrayed him. Chapter 6. The Reckoning begins. Danny Torino's escalation came exactly 1 week later, perfectly timed to shatter any remaining sense of security Trevor and Rebecca might have retained. Victor orchestrated it with the precision of his military training, creating maximum psychological impact while maintaining his role as their protector. The attack began at 2 a.m. when Trevor's apartment building fire alarm triggered, forcing all residents to evacuate. As Trevor stood in the parking lot with his neighbors, he discovered his car windows smashed and a message etched into the paint. Time's up. Victor arrived 20 minutes after Trevor's panicked phone call, having been monitoring police frequencies for any incidents involving his clients. He surveyed the damage with professional calm, while Trevor shook with genuine terror. This is escalation, Victor announced to the police officers taking the report. Classic stalker behavior, demonstrating capability while maintaining psychological distance. He's telling Trevor he can reach him anywhere, anytime. Detective Santos nodded grimly. Mr. Holt, you mentioned you have military experience with this type of threat assessment? 15 years in psychological operations, Victor replied, the lie flowing smoothly. I've seen this pattern in domestic terror cases. The subject is building toward a direct confrontation. Trevor grabbed Victor's arm. What does that mean? It means he's done playing games, Victor said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. Within the next few days, Danny Torino is going to make his move. We need to be ready. The next morning brought crisis for Rebecca. She arrived at her real estate office to find her desk vandalized, files scattered, and a photograph of her and Trevor taped to her computer monitor. Across the photo, in red marker, whore. Rebecca's call to Victor was hysterical. He was in my office. He knows where I work. He has pictures of us. Victor, I'm scared. Come home immediately, Victor instructed. Don't stop anywhere. Don't talk to anyone. I'm implementing emergency protocols. By evening, Victor had transformed their house into what appeared to be a fortress. Security cameras, motion sensors, reinforced locks, all genuine equipment from his professional arsenal. Emma, told that Daddy was helping protect a friend from a bad man, accepted the increased security as an exciting adventure. Rebecca and Trevor, however, were rapidly approaching psychological breakdown. The carefully orchestrated campaign of terror had convinced them they were being hunted by a violent predator who could strike at any moment. Maybe we should go to the police, tell them everything, Trevor suggested during an evening strategy session in Victor's home office. Tell them what? Victor asked. That you're having an affair and it attracted a stalker? That doesn't change the threat level, and it might complicate the investigation. Rebecca shot Trevor a warning look. Victor's right. We just need to trust his expertise until this is over. Victor studied his wife's face, noting the stress lines, the dark circles under her eyes, the nervous energy that had replaced her usual confident demeanor. The psychological pressure was working exactly as planned. There is one option, Victor said slowly, as if the idea was just occurring to him. I could arrange a direct meeting with Torino. Draw him into a controlled environment where we can end this permanently. What do you mean, permanently? Trevor asked. Victor's smile was barely perceptible. I mean, we eliminate the threat. Permanently. Rebecca stared at her husband with new recognition, seeing something in his eyes she'd never noticed before. Victor, you're not talking about. I'm talking about protecting my family, Victor interrupted, his voice carrying an edge that made both Rebecca and Trevor fall silent. Men like Danny Torino understand only one language. I speak that language fluently. Trevor shifted uncomfortably. Maybe we should think about this. There's nothing to think about, Victor said, rising from his chair with the fluid movement of a predator. Torino made his choice when he decided to threaten the people I care about. Now he has to live with the consequences. The room fell silent as Rebecca and Trevor absorbed the implications of Victor's words. They were beginning to understand that their mild-mannered protector might be more dangerous than the threat he was supposedly protecting them from. But it was too late for second thoughts. Danny Torino had one more visit to make, and this time, the confrontation would be face-to-face. Victor's trap was complete. Soon, Rebecca and Trevor would learn exactly what kind of man they'd chosen to betray. Chapter 7. The Final Move. The trap snapped shut on a rain-soaked Thursday evening when Danny Torino made his boldest move yet. Victor had spent weeks conditioning Rebecca and Trevor to expect escalation, and now he would deliver exactly what he'd promised, a direct confrontation that would reveal the truth about everything. At 8 p.m., as Rebecca and Trevor huddled in Victor's house under his protection, the security system triggered an alarm. Motion sensors detected movement in the backyard, and surveillance cameras captured a figure moving through the shadows toward the house. "He's here," Victor announced with cold certainty, studying the monitor feeds. Danny Torino just made his final mistake. Trevor grabbed Rebecca's hand as they watched Victor transform before their eyes. The mild-mannered security consultant disappeared, replaced by something far more dangerous. Victor moved with military precision, checking weapons they hadn't known he possessed, activating communication systems that seemed far too sophisticated for civilian use. "Stay in the safe room," Victor instructed, indicating a reinforced interior office. "No matter what you hear, don't come out until I give the all-clear." "Victor, maybe we should call the police," Rebecca suggested, her voice shaking. "The police can't handle this," Victor replied, his tone suggesting intimate familiarity with violence. "But I can." As Rebecca and Trevor locked themselves in the safe room, Victor prepared for the performance of his life. Through hidden speakers, he would give them a show they'd never forget, and in the process destroy their relationship forever. The first sounds they heard were muffled voices, too distant to understand clearly. Then came what sounded like a struggle, furniture crashing, someone shouting threats in a rough voice they didn't recognize. "Where are they?" Danny Torino's voice echoed through the house, distorted but audible. "I know they're here." Victor's voice responded, calm and professional. "You made a mistake coming here, Torino. This ends now." What followed was the carefully orchestrated sound of combat. Impacts, grunts of effort, the crash of breaking objects. Rebecca and Trevor pressed against the safe room door, listening in terror as their protector battled their stalker. The climax came with a final series of impacts, followed by silence. Then Victor's voice, slightly breathless, "It's over. He won't be bothering anyone anymore." When Victor finally opened the safe room door, his clothes were disheveled, and he had what appeared to be fresh bruises on his face. Behind him, the living room showed signs of struggle. Overturned furniture, broken objects, evidence of violence. "Where is he?" Trevor asked, scanning the room nervously. "Gone," Victor replied. "He won't be coming back." Rebecca stared at her husband with new understanding. "Victor, what did you do?" "I protected my family," Victor said, his voice carrying finality. Danny Torino is no longer a threat to anyone. The implications of Victor's words settled over Rebecca and Trevor like a shroud. They were beginning to realize that their mild-mannered protector had capabilities they'd never imagined, and had possibly just committed murder to protect them. But Victor wasn't finished with his performance. As Rebecca and Trevor struggled to process what they'd witnessed, he activated the final phase of his plan. "There's something else," Victor said, his tone shifting to something more ominous. "While I was dealing with Torino, I found some interesting things on him. Photos, surveillance notes, detailed information about your daily routines." Victor pulled out a manila folder, placing it on the coffee table. "He knew things about you that were very specific. Meeting times, hotel rooms, private conversations. Almost like he'd been conducting professional surveillance." Trevor's face went white. "What kind of surveillance?" "The kind that's only necessary when someone has something to hide," Victor replied, his eyes moving between Rebecca and Trevor with predatory focus. The kind that might be valuable to someone conducting a detailed investigation into adultery. Rebecca's voice was barely a whisper. "Victor, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that Danny Torino wasn't just some random stalker," Victor replied, his smile cold and terrible. "He was very specifically interested in your affair, Rebecca. Your months-long affair with Trevor Mills." The silence that followed was deafening. Rebecca and Trevor stared at Victor in horror as the full scope of their situation became clear. Victor wasn't their protector. He was their predator. Danny Torino had never existed, and the man they betrayed had been orchestrating their terror from the very beginning. Chapter 8. The Truth Revealed. "You see," Victor continued, his voice carrying the calm certainty of a man who had planned every word, "Danny Torino was my creation. A fictional stalker designed to make you both feel helpless, paranoid, and dependent on my protection." Rebecca stumbled backward, her face pale with shock. "That's impossible. The police reports," the detective. "Detective Santos received information from my contacts in law enforcement," Victor interrupted. "Danny Torino's criminal record was meticulously crafted by people who specialize in creating false identities. Every incident, every threat, every moment of terror you experienced was orchestrated by me." Trevor's voice cracked. "You're lying? We saw him on the security cameras." "You saw shadows and suggestions," Victor replied. "Basic misdirection techniques I learned in psychological operations. The human mind fills in details when properly conditioned to expect threat." Victor moved to his desk and activated a hidden panel, revealing banks of monitoring equipment far more sophisticated than any civilian security system. Multiple screens showed recorded footage of Rebecca and Trevor's most intimate moments. Conversations in Trevor's apartment, their hotel encounters, private phone calls where they discussed their plans to destroy Victor's life. 12 hours of high-definition video, Victor announced. Audio recordings of every conversation where you discussed manipulating me, stealing my assets, and turning Emma against me in a custody battle. Rebecca's legs gave out, and she collapsed into a chair. "Victor, please." "Please what?" Victor's voice turned glacial. "Please forgive you for planning to destroy my relationship with my daughter. Please understand that you've been fucking another man in our bed while plotting to steal everything I've built." Trevor tried to edge toward the door, but Victor's movement cut him off with the fluid precision of a trained killer. "Trevor, you're not going anywhere," Victor said. "We're going to have a very detailed conversation about your history of targeting married women and your specific plans for my wife and my assets." "This is insane," Trevor protested. "You can't keep us here." "I can do whatever I want," Victor replied, his voice carrying absolute conviction. "You see, Danny Torino's final act was breaking into my house and threatening my family. When the police arrive tomorrow morning, they'll find evidence of a violent confrontation that ended with the intruder's disappearance." Victor smiled at their horror. "Of course, there will also be evidence that Danny Torino was specifically targeting adulterous couples, with particular focus on Rebecca and Trevor. Very detailed evidence of their affair, their plans to defraud me, and their conspiracy to manipulate custody arrangements." Rebecca began to cry, the sound harsh and desperate. "What do you want from us?" "I want you to understand exactly who you chose to betray," Victor replied. "I want you to realize that your mild-mannered husband is someone who has broken stronger people than you for far less serious offenses." Victor activated another screen, showing financial records that made Trevor gasp in recognition. Bank accounts, property transfers, debt arrangements. A complete picture of Trevor's fraudulent activities extending far beyond his relationship with Rebecca. "Trevor, your history of financial manipulation is quite extensive," Victor observed. "Forged documents, fraudulent loans, identity theft. Enough federal crimes to ensure a very long prison sentence." "You can't prove any of that," Trevor said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I can prove all of it," Victor replied. "Just like I can prove your conspiracy to defraud me, your plans to manipulate my daughter, and your systematic destruction of my marriage." Victor turned to Rebecca, his expression showing no trace of the love that had once existed between them. And you, my dear wife, will soon discover that adultery is the least of your problems. Conspiracy to commit fraud, child endangerment, perjury. By the time I'm finished, you'll be lucky to see Emma for supervised visits. You're talking about destroying our family, Rebecca whispered. No, Victor corrected. You destroyed our family the moment you decided to betray me. I'm simply making sure there are consequences. The room fell silent as Rebecca and Trevor absorbed the full scope of their situation. They had betrayed a man whose profession was destroying people, and now they were experiencing the full extent of his capabilities. Victor's smile was terrible in its coldness. The game is over. You lost the moment you thought you could deceive me. Now we discuss the terms of your surrender. Chapter 9. No Forgiveness. The final phase of Victor's plan unfolded with the precision of a military operation. As dawn approached, he revealed the complete scope of their predicament with methodical thoroughness. Rebecca, you have two choices, Victor announced, spreading legal documents across the coffee table. Option 1. Sign these divorce papers, agreeing to zero alimony, supervised visitation with Emma, and a full confession of your adultery and conspiracy. You'll leave this house with the clothes on your back and never contact Emma directly again. Rebecca stared at the documents in horror. You can't take my daughter from me. Option 2. Victor continued as if she hadn't spoken. I released the evidence to law enforcement, the State Bar Association, and your real estate licensing board. You face criminal charges for fraud and conspiracy, lose your professional licenses, and after serving your prison sentence, you'll be financially destroyed and legally barred from unsupervised contact with Emma anyway. Trevor tried to interrupt. This is extortion. Victor's laugh was utterly without humor. Trevor, you don't have choices. You have consequences. Victor activated a final screen showing Trevor's complete financial destruction in real time. Bank accounts frozen, credit destroyed, employment terminated, criminal charges filed with federal authorities. Your co-conspirators in previous fraud schemes have been contacted by federal investigators. Apparently, they're very eager to cooperate in exchange for reduced sentences. That's impossible, Trevor whispered. You can't have done all this overnight. I've been planning this for weeks, Victor replied. Every phone call you made, every digital transaction, every person you contacted in planning your scheme against me. I monitored all of it. While you thought you were hunting me, I was systematically destroying your entire life. Victor turned back to Rebecca with the cold focus of a predator delivering a killing blow. Emma will be told that Mommy chose to leave because she preferred her boyfriend to her family. She'll grow up knowing that you abandoned her for a man who helped you try to steal her college fund. Victor, please, Rebecca begged. She's your daughter too. Don't poison her against me. Emma is the only good thing that came from our marriage, Victor said, his voice carrying finality. I will protect her from the damage you've caused, and I will ensure she never makes the mistake of trusting someone like you. Victor's phone buzzed with a text message. He read it and smiled. Excellent timing. Detective Santos just confirmed that Danny Torino's criminal associates have provided information about his plans to target our family. The police are issuing a warrant for his arrest, though of course, he'll never be found. He looked at Rebecca and Trevor with satisfaction. The official story is that a violent criminal targeted your affair, escalated to home invasion, and disappeared after being confronted by armed resistance. Very clean, very believable. Victor handed Rebecca a pen. Sign the documents. Rebecca, accept exile with some dignity or be destroyed completely. Those are your only options. As Rebecca's hand shook while signing away her rights to her daughter and her marriage, Victor felt the satisfaction of perfect justice. She had chosen betrayal. Now she would live with consequences that matched the scope of her deception. Trevor was led away in handcuffs an hour later when federal agents arrived with warrants for his arrest on fraud charges. Victor watched from his window as his wife's lover was loaded into a government vehicle, beginning a journey that would end with a decades-long prison sentence. Emma returned from her sleepover to find her mother gone and her father explaining that Mommy had made some bad choices and wouldn't be living with him anymore. At 14, Emma was old enough to understand that her mother had chosen someone else over their family. "Will I see her again?" Emma asked. "That depends on her," Victor replied, knowing Rebecca would never risk the exposure that contact would bring. "But you'll always have me, sweetheart. I'll never leave you." That evening, Victor stood in his study, surrounded by the evidence of his victory. Rebecca's belongings were packed and removed, Trevor was in federal custody, and Emma was safely in his care. His enemies had been destroyed without mercy or chance for redemption. Victor felt no guilt, no regret, no possibility of forgiveness. Rebecca and Trevor had chosen to betray him, to steal from him, to destroy his relationship with his daughter. They had shown him no mercy in their planning. They would receive none in their punishment. The phone rang. Rebecca's voice, desperate and broken. "Victor, I'll do anything." Victor hung up and deleted her number. Rebecca had made her final play, a desperate attempt to frame him for domestic violence. But she had never understood who Commissioner Bradley Morse, Victor's former commanding officer, had personally ensured that Rebecca's false accusations would result in her own arrest for filing false reports and conspiracy. The 911 recording would show her coaching Emma, demonstrating premeditation that would destroy any remaining credibility. Emma would learn that her mother had tried to frame her father for violence he'd never committed. Rebecca would spend the next several years in prison, her reputation destroyed, her relationship with Emma permanently severed. Victor smiled as he locked his study for the night. Rebecca and Trevor had thought they were clever enough to deceive him, steal from him, and destroy his family. They had learned, too late, that some men could not be betrayed without consequences that would echo through the rest of their lives. There would be no reconciliation, no forgiveness, no second chances. Victor Holt was a man who never forgot and never forgave. And now Rebecca and Trevor would spend the rest of their lives remembering what happened when someone made the mistake of crossing him. Emma was safe. The threat was eliminated. And justice had been served with the cold precision of a man who understood that betrayal demanded destruction in return. The game was over. Victor had won completely, and his enemies would never recover from the devastating consequences of their own choices. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. Chapter 1. The Perfect Lie. Ben McCarthy had built his life on patterns. As a forensic accountant who'd helped the FBI dismantle 3 major fraud rings, he understood that chaos always left traces. Numbers never lied. People did. His daughter Neva didn't. That's why, on a humid Tuesday in July, when 9-year-old Neva didn't come home from her piano lesson, Ben's instincts fired like warning flares. His wife Martha stood in their kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, mascara streaming down her face as she sobbed to the 911 operator. "My baby's missing," Martha wailed. "She never came home. Someone took her." Ben watched his wife's performance with a peculiar detachment. In their 12 years of marriage, he'd seen Martha cry exactly 4 times. At her mother's funeral, at Neva's birth, when her gallery went bankrupt, and once during an argument about her spending habits. Each time, the tears had been controlled, almost elegant. This was different. This was theatrical. "Mrs. McCarthy, when did you last see your daughter?" The detective, a weathered woman named Santos, sat across from them in their living room. "I dropped her at Westfield Music Academy at 4 o'clock, Martha said, dabbing her eyes. "Her teacher, Mrs. Chun, she always walks the kids out. But when I got there at 5:30, Mrs. Chun said Neva left early. Said a woman claiming to be me picked her up at 4:45. Ben's jaw tightened. "What woman?" "Mrs. Chun said she wore sunglasses and a headscarf. She had the family password." Martha's voice cracked perfectly. "Butterfly. How would anyone know that?" Ben stood, pacing to the window. His reflection stared back at him. 36 years old, with a lean build of someone who channeled stress into morning runs. His brother Miles said he had accountant eyes, sharp, always calculating. Right now, those eyes were tracking every detail. Only 3 people know that password, Ben said quietly. You, me, and Neva. Detective Santos made a note. Has your daughter seemed worried lately? Any behavior changes? No, Martha said quickly. She's been perfect, happy, normal. Ben thought of last week, when Neva had stood in the doorway of his home office, her small face troubled. Daddy, if someone does something bad but says they love you, are they lying? He'd assumed she meant a friend at school. Now, ice crystallized in his veins. Mr. McCarthy? Santos was looking at him. She asked me a strange question last week, Ben said, watching Martha stiffen. About whether people who love you can still hurt you. Martha's hand trembled as she set down her water glass. She probably meant that girl who pushed her on the playground. Probably. Ben held his wife's gaze, though she never mentioned being pushed. The search consumed 3 days. Volunteers combed parks. News crews camped on their lawn. Ben barely slept, coordinating with police, tracking leads, analyzing phone records. His brother Miles moved in to help, bringing food, handling reporters. Martha was the picture of devastated motherhood, until Ben walked in on her smiling at her phone on day 2. Any news? He'd asked. She jumped, screen going dark. Just a friend offering support. Which friend? You don't know her. Martha's smile was ash. Someone from my gallery days. Ben had built his career on noticing what didn't fit. Martha had closed her gallery 2 years ago, cut ties with that world completely. She claimed she wanted a fresh start, to focus on family. On the evening of the 3rd day, as the sun bled orange across their lawn, a car pulled up. The rear door opened. Neva climbed out. Ben reached her first, dropping to his knees, hands shaking as he touched her face, her arms, confirming she was real. Baby, are you hurt? Who took you? Neva's eyes, dark like his own, held something he'd never seen before. Not fear. Certainty. I'm okay, Daddy. Her voice was steady, too steady for a 9-year-old who'd been missing for 3 days. They didn't hurt me. Who's they? Detective Santos crouched beside them. Neva looked past Ben to where Martha stood on the porch, one hand pressed to her mouth. When Neva's gaze returned to Ben, she pressed something into his palm. A folded piece of paper. I want to go inside and sleep, Neva said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Then, barely a whisper, read it alone. Ben palmed the note as Martha swept Neva into an embrace that looked, to everyone else, like maternal relief. Only Ben noticed how Neva's body stayed rigid, how her eyes stayed open and alert over Martha's shoulder. That night, after Neva was bathed and fed and supposedly sleeping, after Miles had gone home and a last news van had departed, Ben sat in the dark living room. Martha had taken a sleeping pill, her breathing deep and rhythmic in their bedroom. He unfolded the note. Neva's careful handwriting, the letters she'd practiced so diligently. Don't trust Mom. Check our dustbin tonight at midnight. Come alone. Ben read it 3 times. His daughter's words. His daughter, who'd inherited his ability to see patterns, to notice what others missed. He checked his watch. 11:47 p.m. At 11:59, Ben stepped into the garage. The motion light flickered on. Their dustbin sat in the corner, a large, rarely used container they kept for yard waste. He'd taken it out just yesterday. It should be empty. It wasn't. Midnight struck as Ben lifted the lid. Inside, beneath a thin layer of grass clippings, was a black garbage bag. Inside that bag, a box of rat poison with the safety seal broken, a bottle of antifreeze, a printed life insurance policy with his name on it, $2 million dated 6 months ago, and a burner phone. Ben's hands were steady as he powered on the phone. One text conversation with a contact labeled R. Martha, he suspects nothing. Another month and we'll be free. R, you said that last month. The poison isn't working fast enough. Martha, small doses. It looks like a heart condition. The doctor already noted his elevated heart rate and fatigue. R, the kid's getting suspicious. Martha, leave Neva to me. She's 9. Who believe her? R, she's smart like her father. That's the problem. Martha, then maybe we need a different solution. If something happened to her, an accident, Ben would be destroyed. Easy to finish him off after. Or, you'd kill your own daughter? Martha. She's Ben's daughter. I've never felt anything for her. Let's meet tomorrow. The cabin. We'll figure this out. The last message had come 3 days ago, hours before Neva disappeared. Ben's heart hammered, but his mind was crystalline. The pieces assembled themselves like a forensic report. Martha had been poisoning him. The unexplained fatigue, the heart palpitations his doctor couldn't explain, symptoms that had started exactly 6 months ago. The timeline matched the insurance policy. She had a partner. R. Someone she trusted enough to plan murder with. And Neva, brilliant, observant Neva, had figured it out. She'd found the burner phone, read the messages, and somehow staged her own disappearance to get evidence to him safely. Ben photographed everything with his personal phone, uploaded it to 3 separate cloud accounts, then carefully returned everything to the dustbin exactly as he'd found it. His wife wanted him dead. She'd been willing to kill their daughter. As Ben walked back into the house, a cold clarity settled over him. Martha had taught him something valuable in their years together. The best cons worked because the mark never saw them coming. Time to become invisible. Time to show Martha McCarthy what happened when you underestimated an accountant with nothing left to lose. Chapter 2. The Invisible Thread. Ben didn't sleep. Sleep was a luxury for men who hadn't discovered their wives planning their murder. Instead, he sat in his home office, door locked, running searches. The burner phone had given him a number 4R, through a contact he'd cultivated during his FBI days, a telecommunications analyst who owed him for finding her embezzling brother before the feds did. Ben had the number traced by dawn. Registered to a Royce Matthews. Address, 847 Pine Street, the neighboring town. Ben pulled up Royce's social media. 34. Worked as a personal trainer at an upscale gym. Photos showed a man with calculated charm. Expensive haircut, teeth too white, that practiced smile of someone who'd learned to weaponize attraction. Then Ben found it. A photo from 14 months ago. Royce at a gallery opening, arm around a woman. The caption, supporting local art with this beautiful curator. The woman was Martha. Ben's jaw clenched. 14 months. His wife had been planning this for over a year, slow poisoning him while playing the devoted spouse. The sheer patience of it would have been impressive if it wasn't aimed at putting him in the ground. A soft knock startled him. Daddy. Neva slipped inside, closing the door behind her. In the morning light, she looked impossibly small in her butterfly pajamas, but her eyes held that same eerie calm from last night. Did you find it? She whispered. Ben pulled her into his lap, arms tight around her. I found it, baby. You were so brave. Can you tell me what happened? Neva's hands twisted in her lap. 3 weeks ago, I got up for water. I heard Mom on the phone in the garage. She was laughing, saying you'd probably die in your sleep soon, that the doctor already thought you had heart problems. Ben's chest tightened. Why didn't you tell me then? I tried. Neva's voice cracked. Remember? I asked if people who love you can hurt you, but you thought I meant school, and Mom was right there and I... She took a shaky breath. I got scared, so I started looking for proof. Where did you find the phone? In Mom's jewelry box, under the fake bottom. I'd seen her hiding it before. Neva looked up at him. I read the messages. All of them. Daddy, they were going to... She couldn't finish. I know. Ben kissed her forehead. But I need to understand what happened these last 3 days. The truth. Neva's shoulders straightened, that strange composure returning. I knew they were meeting at the cabin. I asked Mom about cabins once, casually, and she got weird. Then I heard her tell you she was going to her book club last Thursday. But I checked her book club online. They don't meet in summer. Ben stared at his 9-year-old daughter with a mixture of horror and awe. So you? I hid a GPS tracker from your desk in her purse. Followed it on my old tablet. Neva pulled a crumpled piece of paper from her pocket. She went to Lake Morrison. There's only one cabin rental there. The manager's number is on their website. I called from a friend's phone, pretended to be doing a school project about local businesses. Asked if they had clients with a last name Matthews. The lady said yes. Mr. Matthews rented cabin 7 every Thursday. Jesus, Neva. Ben's voice was strangled. That was incredibly dangerous and incredibly smart. But the disappearance. I knew they'd stage something eventually. Mom kept talking about accidents in the messages. Neva's hands fisted in her pajamas. So I decided to disappear first. Make it look scary enough that you'd listen when I told you the truth. How did you? Mrs. Chun at piano? Her daughter Lily is my friend. I told Lily my parents were planning a surprise investigation, like a detective game, and I needed to hide for a few days. Lily thought it was cool. Her mom agreed to say someone picked me up early, and I stayed in their basement. I told them I'd text you the truth after a few days, that it was all pretend. The audacity of it, the sheer calculated risk. Ben didn't know whether to ground her forever or hire her as a consultant. The note was your proof, Ben said. You knew I'd find everything. I knew if I just told you, Mom might talk her way out of it. You always give people the benefit of doubt. Neva's eyes hardened. But poison and messages about killing us? That's evidence. Like you always say, numbers don't lie, and neither does proof. Ben held his daughter tight, feeling the weight of what she'd carried alone. I'm going to fix this. But I need you to be normal today, okay? Around Mom, around everyone. Can you do that? I've been doing it for weeks. The brittleness in her voice broke his heart. What are you going to do? Ben thought of Martha downstairs, probably still sleeping off her fake grief. Thought of Royce Matthews, sitting in his apartment, believing he'd gotten away with conspiracy to murder. I'm going to make them confess, Ben said quietly. I'm going to record everything they've done, and then I'm going to make sure they pay for it in a way they'll never forget. Will they go to jail? Eventually. Ben's smile was cold. But first, they're going to tear each other apart. Over the next week, Ben became a ghost in his own life. He played the worried father, the relieved husband, the man grateful to have his family intact. Meanwhile, he was building a case that would make his FBI contacts weep with envy. He started with the poison. A discreet blood test at a private clinic confirmed elevated levels of arsenic and ethylene glycol, antifreeze. Chronic, low-dose exposure over 6 months. Enough to cause the symptoms his doctor had attributed to stress, fatigue, heart palpitations, confusion, nausea. His doctor, thinking Ben was concerned about environmental exposure, documented everything with clinical precision. Medical proof of poisoning, dated and signed. Next, Ben hired a private investigator. Not local, someone from 3 states over with no connection to anyone in his life. Within 72 hours, he had photos. Martha and Royce at the Lake Morrison cabin, kissing on the porch. Martha entering Royce's apartment building 3 times in 1 week. Royce buying flowers at the same shop where Ben bought Martha's birthday roses. But evidence of an affair wasn't enough. Ben needed them on record planning murder. That's where things got creative. Ben's specialty was forensic accounting, but his real talent was understanding human weakness. Greed, especially, and paranoia. Royce Matthews lived beyond his means. The social media photos showed expensive watches, designer gym clothes, a lifestyle his personal trainer salary couldn't support. Ben dug deeper. Credit card debt of $47,000. Car lease about to default. Behind the Instagram facade was a man drowning. Martha had money, her trust fund, which she'd lied to Ben about depleting. He discovered the truth 6 months ago, but said nothing, curious about why she'd lied. Now he understood. She'd been funneling money to Royce, keeping him dependent. Ben created an anonymous email account and sent Royce a message. I know what you and Martha are planning. I have proof. If you want to avoid prison, we need to talk. Come alone to parking lot C at Riverside Park, 9 p.m. Friday. I'll be in a black sedan. Don't tell Martha, or the deal's off. He wasn't going to show up. But Royce didn't know that. The beauty of paranoia was watching it metastasize. Ben placed a voice-activated recorder under the bench in the park. A calculated risk, but at 9 p.m. on a Friday, the area would be deserted. Then he drove to a hilltop overlook with perfect view of the parking lot and waited with binoculars. At 8:55, Royce's Mustang pulled in. The man sat there for 20 minutes, checking his phone, scanning the lot. At 9:17, he made a call. Ben's secondary phone, one he'd set up to forward calls from Martha's number, rang. He let it go to a recording app. It's me. Royce's voice was tight. We have a problem. What problem? Martha, annoyed. Ben pictured her at her book club, the one that actually met now that Neva was home safe. Someone knows. I got an email saying they have proof, wanted to meet tonight. I'm at the park, but no one showed. Silence. Then, it's a trap. Someone's trying to spook us. What if it's him? What if Ben knows? Impossible. He's an accountant, not a detective. And he's still sick. I checked his pill organizer today. The poison's working. Then who? I don't know, but we can't panic. Martha's voice turned calculating. Did you bring the burner phone? No. I left it at the cabin like you said. Good. Go there now. Get rid of it and anything else. Burn it all. We stay calm, stick to the plan. After Ben dies, and the way he looks, that's maybe 2 more months. We wait a respectful year, then slowly start seeing each other publicly. By then, any investigation will be cold. And if he doesn't die, if the poison just makes him sick, Martha's laugh was ice. Then we move to plan B, carbon monoxide leak. Everyone's asleep, tragic accident. The whole family goes. Jesus, Martha, you don't have the stomach for this? Because I can find someone who does. Someone who won't leave me with debt and constant demands for money. I love you. You love my bank account. But that's fine. I love your abs and your willingness to do what's necessary. We're partners, baby. Now go to the cabin. Clean house. Text me when it's done. The call ended. Ben lowered his phone, hands steady despite the white-hot rage coursing through him. The voice recorder under the bench would have caught Royce's side of the conversation, enough for reasonable suspicion. The phone recording caught Martha's side, conspiracy to commit murder, admission of ongoing poisoning, threats to kill the entire family. Combined with the evidence Neva had found, the medical reports, the PI photos, and the insurance policy, Ben had enough to bury them both. But he wasn't ready yet, because Ben McCarthy hadn't spent years dismantling fraud rings by going to the police immediately. He'd learned that the most satisfying wins came from watching criminals destroy themselves. And he had a plan that would do exactly that. Chapter 3, The Architect's Hand. Saturday morning, Ben made coffee with hands that didn't shake. Across the kitchen table, Martha scrolled through her phone, smiling at something. Probably Royce's text confirming he'd burned the evidence. Evidence Ben had already photographed and documented. The burner phone was currently in a safe deposit box at a bank 3 towns over, along with copies of everything else. You seem better, Martha said, not looking up. More energetic. Switched multivitamins. Ben sipped his coffee from a bottle he'd secured with a lock, kept in his office. He'd been swapping out Martha's poisoned food for safe alternatives for days, secretly disposing of anything she prepared for him. I think the old ones weren't agreeing with me. Martha's smile flickered. That's good, honey. You've been so tired lately. I have, haven't I? Ben set down his mug. Weird how it started around the same time you got that new life insurance policy on me. The one I didn't know about until the agent called to confirm details. Martha's knuckles whitened on her phone. I wanted to surprise you. With the coverage. For our future. $2 million is quite a surprise. You're the breadwinner. It made sense. Her voice was steady, but Ben caught the calculation in her eyes, wondering what he knew, how to play this. You're right. Ben stood, kissed her forehead. She flinched just barely. I'm going to take Neva out today. Father-daughter time. She's been through a lot. Where? The Science Museum. She's been asking. Relief washed over Martha's face. A whole day without her husband and daughter at home. A whole day to call Royce, to plan, to strategize. Perfect. That sounds wonderful. I'll catch up on things here. Ben collected Neva, who'd been waiting in her room, backpack ready. She'd been sleeping in her room with the door locked, a chair wedged under the handle. Ben had installed a security camera aimed at her door, monitoring from his phone. No one was getting to his daughter. In the car, Neva spoke quietly. You're going to do it today? Phase 1. Ben glanced at her in the rearview mirror. You ready to be a normal 9-year-old for a while? No more detective work. Is she going to jail? Eventually. But first, I need to make sure the case is airtight. And Ben's jaw set. I need her to understand exactly what she tried to do. What she almost did. Good. Neva's voice was small but fierce. She should understand. They didn't go to the Science Museum. Instead, Ben drove to his brother Miles's house. Miles opened the door in workout clothes, surprise shifting to concern when he saw Ben's expression. "I need you to keep Neva for the weekend," Ben said. "And I need you to not ask questions yet." Miles studied his younger brother. They'd always been close. Miles had raised Ben after their parents died in a car crash when Ben was 15. He knew Ben's tells, his patterns. "How bad?" Miles asked quietly. "Bad enough that Neva can't be home. But I have it handled." Miles looked at Neva, who met his gaze steadily. Too steadily for a kid her age. Whatever had happened, his niece had grown up fast. "Okay." Miles stepped aside. "But Ben, whatever you're doing, it's legal," Ben said. "Mostly true. And necessary. Completely true." With Neva's safe, Ben drove to the county clerk's office. Using his FBI credentials, he was still technically a consultant. He pulled property records. The Lake Morrison cabin was owned by a rental company, but Royce Matthews had a long-term lease agreement. 12 months, renewable. Interesting. A personal trainer couldn't afford that, but a woman siphoning money from her trust fund could. Ben drove to Lake Morrison. The cabin was isolated, surrounded by pines, invisible from the main road. Perfect for assignations and murder planning. Ben parked a quarter-mile away and approached on foot. The cabin was empty. He confirmed Royce's gym schedule, knew he'd be teaching spin class until 3. Ben picked the lock, a skill from his FBI days, and entered. The interior was sparse. Bedroom, kitchenette, sitting area. Ben moved methodically, photographing everything. He found Martha's earring under the bed. A bottle of wine with 2 glasses, one marked with her lipstick shade. Receipts for dinners, hidden in a drawer. And jackpot, a laptop hidden in a vent panel. Password protected, but Ben had tools for that. 20 minutes later, he was in. Email drafts between Royce and Martha. Never sent, just saved as a secret communication method. Ben's doctor ordered cardiac tests. They're getting concerned. We need to back off the antifreeze. We've invested 6 months. If we stop now and he recovers, it's all for nothing. If we don't stop and they find traces, it's life in prison. Then we use plan B. The carbon monoxide. I can rig the furnace. Winter is 5 months away. So we wait. Or we think of something else. What about a car accident? Brake line? Too suspicious after Neva's disappearance. Everyone's watching us. Ben downloaded everything onto an encrypted drive. Then he placed his own insurance, a keylogger program, invisible, that would send him copies of every keystroke on this laptop. Anything they planned from here forward, he'd know. But the real coup was in the bedroom closet, a locked safe. Ben cracked it, another FBI skill, and found $70,000 in cash. Martha's money, obviously, being kept here, away from their joint accounts, ready for the escape. Ben photographed the money, but left it untouched. He added something else, a GPS tracker embedded in the stack. Wherever this money went, he'd know. He was locking up when his phone buzzed. The voice-activated recorder he'd hidden in his own home office, because if Martha was planning murder, she'd make calls from the safest place she knew, had picked up something. Ben played the recording. Martha's voice. "It's me. We have a new problem." "Royce, what now?" Ben asked about the life insurance. "He knows." "Shit. What did you say?" "That I wanted to surprise him with coverage. He seemed to buy it, but..." Martha's voice tightened. "He's not dying fast enough. He's getting stronger. I checked his vitamin bottle. It's a different brand. New bottle, still sealed. He switched them. Why would he? I don't know. Maybe his doctor recommended change. Maybe he's getting suspicious." Pause. "We need to accelerate." "Ow!" "The carbon monoxide plan. But not winter. This week." "Martha, it's the only way." "Ben's smart. If he's suspicious, he'll start looking. We do this now, or we lose everything." Silence. Then Royce's voice, uncertain now. "You're good with your hands. You fix the furnace to leak tonight. I'll make sure Ben and Neva are home and asleep by 10. Pills in their drinks. They won't wake up. Come morning, tragic accident. Whole family. I'm the only survivor. You'd kill Neva too? She's a liability." Martha's voice was flat. "She found a phone once. She could find other things. And honestly, I never wanted kids. Being a mother was Ben's dream, not mine. The recording ended. Ben sat in his car, breathing carefully. This was it. Premeditated murder planned for tonight. He had recordings, evidence, everything. He could go to the police now in this. But that wasn't enough. Because Ben needed Martha and Royce to understand, really understand, what happened when you underestimated someone. When you thought kindness meant weakness. When you mistook patience for ignorance. He made 3 calls. First, to Detective Santos. I need to talk to you about new information regarding Neva's disappearance. Can you come to my house tomorrow at 9 a.m.? It's important. Second, to his lawyer. I need you to prepare emergency custody paperwork. Full custody, restraining order, the works. I'll explain tomorrow. Third, to a number he hadn't called in 5 years. His old FBI partner, now with the Organized Crime Division. I need a favor and a wire. By the time Ben drove home, the sun was setting. Martha was in the kitchen, preparing dinner. She smiled at him, warm and loving, the perfect wife. Where's Neva? Sleepover at Miles's. She wanted to spend time with her uncle. Ben watched Martha's eyes light up. Even better. Only one target to handle tonight. That's nice. I made your favorite, lasagna. Wonderful. Ben smiled back. I'll eat well tonight. Chapter 4. The Wire. Ben ate none of the lasagna. While Martha was in the bathroom, he scraped his portion into a Ziploc bag, replaced it with an identical serving from a container Miles had prepared, then sealed the bag for toxicology testing. The pills Martha had crushed into his wine. He'd seen her do it through the reflection in the kitchen window. He'd extracted with a careful pour into his prepared glass, substituting non-drugged wine from his locked office supply. At 9:47 p.m., Ben slumped dramatically on the couch. I don't feel well. I'm exhausted. Martha appeared, concern painted on her face. Maybe you should sleep. I'll clean up. Yeah. Ben let his words slur. Good idea. He climbed the stairs slowly, heavily, the performance of a man drugged. In the bedroom, he arranged pillows under the covers, his form barely visible in the dark. Then he slipped into the walk-in closet, where he'd prepared hours ago. Laptop open, cameras positioned, FBI-grade wire taped to his chest. At 10:23 p.m., he heard the garage door. Footsteps. Royce Matthews had entered his home. Through the crack in the closet door, Ben watched as Martha led Royce to the bedroom. She pressed a finger to her lips, pointed at the sleeping form in bed. He's out, Royce whispered. Like a light. Martha's smile was predatory. I used 3 pills. He'll sleep through anything. They moved to the basement. Ben followed silently, 1 floor up, listening through the vent system. Furnace is here, Martha was saying. Can you make it look like a malfunction? Yeah. Royce's voice echoed. Disconnect the carbon monoxide detector, block the exhaust vent, crack the heat exchanger. Gas fills the house in about 2 hours. At the levels this will produce, he'll be dead by dawn. And it'll look like an accident. Old furnace, tragic malfunction. Happens every winter. They'll blame the property inspector, maybe the manufacturer. You'll be the grieving widow. How long until you can do it? 20 minutes. But Martha. Royce hesitated. Are you sure? This is murder. Actual, irreversible murder. You're developing a conscience now. Martha's laugh was cold. You're the one who suggested the antifreeze. You're the one who said break lines. Don't pretend to be noble. I know, but nothing. We're in this together. You want our debt? You want the life we've planned? Then do your job and fix the fucking furnace. Silence. Then the sound of tools. Ben recorded every word. In his pocket, his phone was live streaming to 3 separate cloud servers and directly to his FBI contact secure line. Whatever happened now, the evidence was ironclad. But he wasn't done. At 10:51 p.m., Ben emerged from his hiding spot. He walked downstairs, each step deliberate. He paused at the basement door, listening to Royce work, Martha supervising. Then he turned on every light in the house. Martha, he called, voice clear and strong. Can you come here? We need to talk. The scrambling from the basement was almost comical. Royce swearing, Martha hissing orders. Ben stood in the living room, arms crossed as they emerged. Martha's face was a mask of shock. Ben, you're awake. You should be. Drug. Ben pulled the wine glass from his pocket, still containing the crushed pills. These drugs. I saw you put them in. Didn't drink the wine. Didn't eat the lasagna either. I'll have both tested tomorrow. Though I'm betting we'll find enough sedatives to knock out a horse. Martha's mouth opened, closed. Royce had gone pale, tool belt still hanging from his waist. Let me guess, Ben continued conversationally. Royce here was about to rig the furnace. Carbon monoxide poisoning. I'd be dead by morning. Tragic accident. Grieving widow collects $2 million and runs off with her personal trainer boyfriend. How am I doing? Ben, I can explain. Martha started. Can you explain why you've been poisoning me for 6 months? Ben's voice was surgical. Or why you plan to murder our daughter. Or why you staged her kidnapping to scare her into silence when she discovered your affair. I never. Stop. The word cracked like a whip. I have recordings, Martha. Everything. Your phone calls. Your messages. Your email drafts on a laptop at the cabin. 6 months of evidence. All documented. All time-stamped. Royce bolted for the door. Ben didn't move. Outside, police sirens wailed to life. The house was suddenly bathed in blue and red. I called them 30 minutes ago, Ben said. Told them I had evidence of an attempted murder in progress. They've been waiting outside, listening on the wire I'm wearing. He pulled aside his shirt collar, showing the device. Martha's face crumpled. Not with remorse, with rage. You bastard. You fucking bastard. Do you know what you've done? Saved my life? Protected my daughter? Ben's eyes were ice. Yeah, I know exactly what I've done. The door burst open. Detective Santos entered with 4 officers, guns drawn. Royce Matthews, Martha McCarthy, you're under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and assault with a deadly weapon. As the officers cuffed them, Martha twisted toward Ben. This isn't over. I have money. Lawyers. You'll never. Your trust fund. Ben smiled without warmth. I froze it this morning. Emergency court order based on evidence of you using it for criminal activity. Every account, every asset. You're broke, Martha. You'll get a public defender. Her scream was inarticulate fury. Royce was crying. I didn't want to do it. She made me. She said we'd lose everything. Save it for your lawyer, Santos said, hauling him out. When they were gone, the house suddenly quiet. Ben sat heavily on the couch. His hands were shaking now, adrenaline crashing. He'd done it. They were arrested. Neva was safe. But the fury, the cold, calculating fury, hadn't left. Because legal justice was one thing. But Ben wanted something more. He wanted them to understand exactly what they'd lost, what they destroyed, and what happened when you tried to kill a man who'd spent his career understanding the precise mechanics of human greed. Chapter 5. The Price of Greed. The arraignment was a circus. News crews packed the courthouse, their cameras trained on Martha McCarthy, the beautiful woman accused of trying to murder her family. She arrived in an orange jumpsuit, no makeup, hair tangled. The transformation from elegant wife to desperate criminal was stark. Ben sat in the gallery with Neva and Miles. His daughter gripped his hand, her small frame tense as Martha was led in. Daddy, she looks different, Neva whispered. She is different, Ben replied. We're seeing who she really is now. Martha's public defender, a harried young man named Gordon Jimenez who'd clearly pulled the short straw at his office, tried to argue for bail. Your Honor, Mrs. McCarthy has no prior record, strong community ties. She's accused of poisoning her husband over 6 months and attempting to kill him and her daughter via carbon monoxide. The judge interrupted. She has significant financial resources. Actually, the prosecutor interjected. Those resources have been frozen pending civil litigation. Mr. McCarthy has filed for emergency custody and divorce. Mrs. McCarthy has approximately $300 to her name. Martha's head snapped up, hatred burning in her eyes as she found Ben in the crowd. Bail is denied. The judge's gavel fell. Given the severity of the charges and the ongoing threat to the victims, the defendant will be held without bail pending trial. As Martha was led away, she twisted in her restraints. Ben, please, we can talk about this. I made mistakes, but we can fix. The door closed on her pleading. Royce Matthews' arraignment was next. He shuffled in, shoulders slumped, the confident personal trainer persona completely shattered. His lawyer, a semi-competent private attorney his parents had mortgaged their house to afford, made a desperate play. "Your Honor," my client was coerced. Mrs. McCarthy manipulated him, used their relationship to. Your client brought tools to dismantle a furnace with intent to commit murder, the prosecutor said flatly. He was recorded explaining exactly how he'd caused carbon monoxide poisoning. There's no coercion here, just conspiracy. Bail was set at $1 million. Royce's mother sobbed in the front row. They couldn't make it. He'd rot in county jail until trial. As they left the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Ben pulled Neva close, Miles running interference. One reporter shoved a microphone in Ben's face. "Mr. McCarthy, how does it feel knowing your wife tried to kill you?" Ben stopped, looked directly at the camera. "It feels like justice is finally catching up with someone who thought she could get away with murder because her husband was too kind to notice. She was wrong." The clip went viral within hours. Back home, Ben began dismantling Martha's life with the same precision she'd tried to use, ending his. The trust fund was easy. With evidence of criminal activity, the trustees froze the account pending resolution. Martha had been receiving $10,000 monthly. That spigot was shut off. Next, Ben filed for divorce. His lawyer, a shark named Berta Mayer who specialized in high-conflict cases, went nuclear. Full custody of Neva, restraining order, division of assets with Ben claiming Martha's share due to her attempt on his life. In cases of attempted spousal murder, many states had clauses that prevented the guilty party from benefiting from marital assets. "She'll fight this," Berta warned. "Even from jail. Let her." Ben's smile was grim. "Every legal fee, every motion, it drains what little resources she has left. Her parents are dead, no siblings, no rich friends left from her gallery days. She burns money fighting me. She has less for her defense." Cold. Berta looked impressed. "I like it." Ben also discovered something interesting while digging through Martha's financial records. She'd been embezzling from her own gallery before it closed. Small amounts, hidden in creative bookkeeping. Not enough to prosecute back then, but enough to show a pattern of financial dishonesty. He handed that information to the IRS. Within a week, Martha had a tax audit pending, dating back 7 years. Even if she beat the murder charges, and she wouldn't, but hypothetically, she'd face years of financial penalties and potential fraud charges. But Ben's masterpiece was Royce Matthews. See, Royce's legal strategy hinged on painting himself as a victim, manipulated by an older, wealthier woman. His lawyer was building a case that Martha was the mastermind, Royce just a pawn. Ben made sure that narrative collapsed. He reached out to Royce's ex-girlfriend, a woman named Felicia Vincent who'd filed a restraining order against him 3 years ago. Ben offered to pay her legal fees to testify about Royce's controlling behavior, his obsession with money, his willingness to lie and manipulate. Felicia jumped at the chance. "He told me once that he'd do anything for the right payday," she said in her deposition. "He was obsessed with get-rich-quick schemes. When I told him that scared me, he got violent." Ben found 2 other women with similar stories. By the time he was done, Royce Matthews looked less like a manipulated victim and more like a calculated predator who'd found a perfect mark in Martha. The prosecutors loved it. Their case went from strong to bulletproof. 3 weeks after the arrest, Ben received a call from Gordon Jimenez, Martha's lawyer. "Mr. McCarthy, my client would like to speak with you." "No." She says she has information you'd want to know. "About the case." Ben paused. "What kind of information?" "She wouldn't tell me. Just said." Gordon sighed. "She said to tell you it's about why she really did it, and that you want to know." Against his better judgment, Ben agreed to a supervised meeting at the jail. Martha looked worse. Thinner, hollowed out, the orange jumpsuit hanging off her frame. When Ben sat across from her, separated by plexiglass, she tried to smile. It cracked halfway. "Thank you for coming. You have 5 minutes." Ben's voice was granite. "Talk." Martha's hands twisted in her lap. "I need you to understand, this wasn't about you. It was never personal. You tried to kill me. How much more personal does it get?" "No, I mean," she took a breath. "I never loved you, Ben. I'm sorry, but it's true. I married you because you were safe, stable. After my gallery failed, after my mother died, I needed stability. You gave me that, and that made me expendable. I met Royce a year after we married. At a fundraiser. He was exciting, dangerous, everything you weren't. Martha's eyes were distant. We started the affair, and at first it was just fun. But then I realized I'd married the wrong man. I wanted excitement, not stability. Money I controlled, not joint accounts. Freedom. So you decided to murder me instead of just divorcing me. The prenup. Martha's laugh was bitter. You insisted on it, remember? If we divorced, I got nothing. The house was yours before we married. Most assets were yours. The trust fund was mine, but I burned through half of it on the gallery. A divorce meant starting over with scraps. So it was money. It was freedom and money. Martha met his eyes. With you dead, I got the life insurance, the house, everything. Royce and I could disappear, start over. Live the life I actually wanted. Ben stared at her. And Neva? What was she? Collateral damage. Martha's face hardened. I never wanted children. You did. You pushed for it. Said it would complete our family. I went along because that's what wives do. But I never bonded with her. She was your daughter, not mine. The casual cruelty of it, the sheer sociopathic disconnect, left Ben breathless. You're a monster. I'm honest. Martha leaned forward. And here's the thing, Ben. I'm going to beat this. The evidence is circumstantial. The messages? I can claim Royce manipulated them, edited them. The burner phone? Same thing. The poison in your system? I'll say you must have been exposed somewhere else. Royce tampering with the furnace? I had no idea he was here. I was drugged too. I didn't know. Her smile was slow, calculated. My lawyer's an idiot, but I'll fire him, get someone better. I still have friends, people who owe me favors. I'll mount a defense that creates reasonable doubt. They recorded you in my house, planning something my boyfriend was doing without my knowledge. I could say I was horrified, that I was about to stop him when the police arrived. Martha's eyes glinted. Juries love a beautiful woman who seems remorseful. I've been practicing. Ben's stomach churned. She might actually be right. With enough legal maneuvering, enough performance on the stand, she could plant doubt. Not much, but enough for one juror. That's all it took for a mistrial. I came here to tell you this, Martha continued, because I want you to prepare. This isn't over. And when I get out, and I will get out eventually, I'll get my daughter back. I'll get my life back. And you'll have nothing. Ben stood slowly. Thank you for the warning. That's it? No threats? No anger? No. Ben's smile was cold. Because you're wrong, Martha. You won't beat this. You won't get out. And you definitely won't touch Neva ever again. How can you be so sure? Because I know something you don't. Ben leaned close to the glass. You're not just fighting a murder charge. You're fighting me. And I'm very, very good at what I do. He left her there, her confident smile faltering. Because Ben had one more card to play, and it was going to destroy any chance Martha had of wriggling free. Chapter 6. The Trap Springs. Ben's FBI contact, a man named August Steele, met him at a coffee shop 2 days later. August was late 50s, gray-haired, with the tired eyes of someone who'd seen too much human darkness. I got your message, August said, sliding into the booth. You want to know about the cabin? Everything. August pulled out a folder. Lake Morrison Cabin 7. Owned by a rental company, but they have a long-term lease with Royce Matthews. Nothing illegal about that. But when we ran financials on the rental company, he smiled. It's owned by a shell corporation, which is owned by another shell corporation, which, for layers deep, is owned by Martha McCarthy. Ben's eyes widened. She owned the cabin, not just the cabin, the whole rental company, 10 properties around the state. It's how she was laundering money from her trust fund, making it look like legitimate business income. August tapped the folder. The trust had rules about how she could spend it. Conservative investments, no high-risk ventures. So she created a fake rental business, funneled money through it, claimed business expenses that were actually personal spending. That's fraud. That's the tip of the iceberg. August leaned back. We dug deeper. Martha's been running this scheme for 5 years. Total amount? Almost $700,000 in improperly used trust funds. The trustees never noticed because she was good at paperwork. Ben processed this. That's not just civil fraud. That's multiple federal crimes. Wire fraud, tax evasion, identity theft. She created fake identities for the shell corporations. If we charge her federally, it's 20 years minimum. And federal sentences? No parole. Why are you telling me this? August's expression was serious. Because the Bureau wants to use this case. We've been building a task force on financial fraud, especially schemes involving domestic abuse. Abusers who steal from partners, create financial dependency. Your wife's case is perfect for it. High profile, clear evidence, sympathetic victim. You want to make an example of her. We want to make sure she never sees daylight again. August pushed the folder across. But we need your cooperation. Full testimony, access to all your evidence, willingness to go public with the story. It'll be invasive. Media coverage, your life exposed. Ben thought of Neva, already traumatized. Thought of the circus trial, reporters dissecting their family. But he also thought of Martha's confident smile, her certainty that she'd beat this. Do it, Ben said. Whatever it takes. The federal indictment came down 3 weeks later. Martha McCarthy was charged with 12 counts of wire fraud, 8 counts of tax evasion, 4 counts of identity theft, conspiracy to commit murder, and attempted murder. The state charges were superseded by federal charges. Her new lawyer, an expensive one, paid for by friends who'd pooled resources, tried to fight it. But the evidence was overwhelming. August's team had torn apart every shell corporation, traced every dollar, documented every lie. At the preliminary hearing, the prosecutor laid out the case with clinical precision. Martha McCarthy spent 5 years systematically stealing from her own trust fund, creating an elaborate web of fake businesses to hide her theft. She used this money to support an affair with Royce Matthews. And when she feared her husband was becoming suspicious, she decided to murder him for a $2 million life insurance payout. Over 6 months, she poisoned him with arsenic and antifreeze. When that wasn't working fast enough, she planned to kill him and her 9-year-old daughter via carbon monoxide poisoning. Only the alertness of that 9-year-old girl, who discovered the plot and bravely alerted her father, prevented 2 murders. The courtroom was silent. The evidence includes recorded conversations, financial records, medical documentation of poisoning, physical evidence of attempted murder, and testimony from multiple witnesses. The defendant has shown no remorse. In fact, when questioned, she stated she never wanted her daughter and viewed both her husband and child as obstacles to her desired lifestyle. The judge denied bail again. Martha's trial date was set for 6 months out. But Royce Matthews' lawyer saw the writing on the wall. With federal charges stacked on top of state charges, with evidence that made conviction certain, the lawyer approached the prosecution with a deal. Royce would testify against Martha. Full cooperation, complete honesty, in exchange for a reduced sentence, 15 years instead of life. Ben was consulted. It's your call, the prosecutor said. He was part of it. He deserves life. But his testimony would seal Martha's fate beyond any doubt. Ben thought about it. Royce was weak, manipulated, desperate. Not innocent. He planned murder, but less culpable than Martha. I want him to serve at least 15 years, Ben said. And I want him to admit everything in open court. Done. Royce Matthews' allocution was devastating. In a packed courtroom, with Martha watching from the defense table, Royce described everything. The affair, Martha's manipulation, her obsession with money, the slow decision to kill Ben, Martha's insistence that they had to do it, that she'd planned everything, that it was foolproof. She said Ben was too nice, too trusting, Royce said, voice breaking. She said he'd never see it coming. She called him predictable, said accountants didn't have imagination. Ben watched Martha's face crumble as her co-conspirator destroyed her defense. Any claim of innocence, of being victimized by Royce, evaporated as he painted her as the mastermind. Did you want to kill Ben McCarthy? The prosecutor asked. No. Royce was crying. I was scared. In debt. Martha said she'd leave me if I didn't help. She said we'd lose everything. I didn't want to do it, but I didn't want to lose her either. I know that's not an excuse. I know I'm guilty. I'm sorry. It was a good performance. Probably coached. But it was also probably true. Martha's lawyer tried damage control and cross-examination, but Royce held firm. The evidence supported everything he said. When it was over, Martha was led away. She didn't look at Ben. Didn't look at anyone. She looked defeated. Chapter 7. The Unraveling. 6 months passed. Ben rebuilt his life with the focused intensity of someone who'd been given a second chance. He sold the house, too many bad memories, and bought a smaller place across town with a huge backyard where Neva could play. He underwent chelation therapy to remove the heavy metals from his system, regained weight, started running again. Neva started therapy. A child psychologist named Evangeline Stevens specialized in trauma and slowly, carefully, helped Neva process what had happened. The nightmares decreased. Her smile returned. Miles moved in temporarily, providing stability. They established routines. Family dinners, movie nights, homework at the kitchen table. Normal, boring, wonderful routines. The divorce was finalized in absentia. Martha's assets were divided with Ben, receiving the marital home's equity, custody of Neva, and reimbursement for medical expenses related to the poisoning. Martha's trust fund, what remained after legal fees and restitution, was placed in a fund for Neva, inaccessible to Martha forever. Martha's trial began in April. The prosecution's case took 3 weeks, witness after witness dismantling any possible defense. The medical examiner who'd confirmed poisoning, the FBI agents who'd traced the financial fraud, the neighbors who'd seen Royce's car at the McCarthy house at odd hours, the cell phone expert who'd verified the burner phone's communications, and Ben himself. Taking the stand was harder than he'd expected. Martha's lawyer, a sharp woman named Virginia Pena who'd replaced Gordon, was aggressive in cross-examination. Mr. McCarthy, isn't it true you have expertise in financial investigations? Yes. So you understand how to manipulate financial records? I understand how to find manipulation. That's different. But you could manipulate them yourself, couldn't you? Plant evidence. I could. Ben met Virginia's eyes. But I didn't. Every piece of evidence was verified by third parties. The FBI, independent forensic accountants, medical professionals. I didn't plan anything. I just uncovered what was already there. You claim my client poisoned you. But the symptoms you described, fatigue, heart palpitations, could have been caused by stress. They were caused by arsenic and ethylene glycol in my bloodstream. That's not stress. That's attempted murder. Could those substances have been ingested accidentally? For 6 months? Inconsistent, increasing doses? No. Virginia tried to poke holes, but the evidence held. Ben's testimony was clinical, factual, devastating. The defense put Martha on the stand. A risky move, but they had no choice. She wore a demure blue dress, hair pulled back, minimal makeup. The picture of a wronged woman. Her testimony was a masterclass in manipulation. She'd never meant to hurt anyone. Royce had manipulated her. Yes, she'd had an affair, and she was ashamed, but she'd never wanted Ben dead. The messages were taken out of context. The financial fraud was a mistake, poor record-keeping, not intentional theft. She loved her daughter, always had. The prosecution was twisting her words. I know I made mistakes, Martha said, dabbing her eyes. I was weak. I let Royce manipulate me. But I never wanted my husband dead. Never. I wanted to be free of the marriage, yes, but not through murder. Through divorce. The prenup didn't matter. I just wanted out. Then why not just divorce him? The prosecutor asked on cross. I was scared. Scared of being alone. Scared of losing everything. Royce said we could be together, but I needed money. So I took money from my trust foolishly. But that's fraud, not murder. Did you poison your husband? No. Did you plan to kill him with carbon monoxide? No. Royce talked about that, but I was horrified. I was going to stop him. That's why I was in the house when the police arrived. You were recorded discussing these plans. I was pretending to go along, trying to figure out how to get help without Royce hurting me. It was a good story. Well practiced. If Ben hadn't had the mountain of evidence, hadn't had Royce's testimony, it might have even worked on a juror or two. But the prosecutor destroyed her on cross. Mrs. McCarthy, you claim you were manipulated by Royce Matthews. But you own the cabin where you met. You control the money. You created the shell corporations. Doesn't that make you the manipulator? I know, he told me to. Mr. Matthews testified that you insisted on killing your husband, that you called him too nice and predictable. Do you deny saying that? Martha's face flushed. I don't remember. Do you deny writing in an email draft? Ben's doctor ordered cardiac tests. They're getting concerned. Those are your words, discussing your husband's reaction to the poison you were giving him. I didn't write that. We have forensic evidence that you did. Do you deny telling Mr. Matthews that your daughter was a liability? I was upset. Yes or no, Mrs. McCarthy? Martha's composure cracked. I was scared. I didn't know what I was saying. You knew enough to hide a burner phone in a jewelry box, to create shell corporations, to plan your husband's death for 6 months. The prosecutor's voice was steel. You weren't scared. You were calculating. And you almost got away with murder. The jury deliberated for 8 hours. When they returned, the verdict was read. Guilty on all counts. Martha's face went white. Her lawyer touched her arm, but she jerked away. As the judge thanked the jury, Martha's eyes found Ben in the gallery. The hatred there was pure, undiluted. If looks could kill, Ben would have dropped dead. He stared back, unflinching. Sentencing was scheduled for 2 weeks later. Chapter 8. The Final Judgment. The day of sentencing, the courthouse was packed. Victims' family members were allowed to speak. Impact statements that would inform the judge's decision. Ben had prepared his statement for weeks. Neva was in school. He and Miles had agreed she didn't need to be present for this. She'd seen enough. When his turn came, Ben approached the podium. Martha sat at the defense table, staring straight ahead, her face a mask. Your Honor, Ben began, 6 months ago, I learned that my wife, the woman I'd trusted with my life, with my daughter's life, had been systematically poisoning me. That she'd planned to murder me and our 9-year-old daughter for money. That she'd felt nothing for us, ever. He paused, gathering himself. The physical effects of the poisoning are resolving. I'll likely have long-term cardiovascular issues, but I'll survive. The psychological effects are harder. I wake up at night wondering what signs I missed. How someone could share my bed, raise my child, and simultaneously plan our deaths. Martha flinched but didn't look at him. But the worst part is what this did to Neva. She's 9 years old. She discovered her mother's plot because she was smart and observant, qualities I'm proud of. But she had to carry that knowledge alone, scared and uncertain. She had to stage her own disappearance to get proof to me because she knew no one would believe her otherwise. What 9-year-old should have to do that? Ben's voice hardened. Martha McCarthy didn't just try to kill us. She showed us exactly how little we meant to her. She called Neva a liability. She called me predictable. We were obstacles, nothing more. And the only thing she regrets is getting caught. He looked directly at Martha for the first time. I'm not asking for leniency. I'm asking for justice. This woman tried to murder 2 people for money. She showed no remorse when caught, only anger that her plan failed. If there was any doubt about her character, her testimony at trial erased it. She lied on the stand, blamed others, took no responsibility. She's a danger to society and to her own family. Ben stepped back. Thank you. The judge nodded gravely, then turned to Martha. Does the defendant wish to speak? Virginia Pena whispered urgently to Martha, who shook her head. Then, ignoring her lawyer, Martha stood. I'd like to address the court. Virginia looked alarmed, but it was too late. Martha's voice was steady. Your Honor, I've listened to weeks of testimony painting me as a monster. I've heard my husband describe me as calculating, cold, remorseless. I've watched a jury convict me based on evidence that was, frankly, circumstantially interpreted. The judge's eyebrows rose. Mrs. McCarthy, I'm not finished. Martha's eyes blazed. Yes, I had an affair. Yes, I mismanaged my trust fund. But I did not try to kill anyone. The prosecution built a narrative that fit their evidence. But correlation isn't causation. My husband was sick, maybe from environmental factors, maybe from stress. Was I a good wife? No, but that doesn't make me a murderer. She turned to Ben. You want me to show remorse for something I didn't do? I won't. I won't apologize for crimes I didn't commit just to make this easier for you. You've already taken everything. My daughter, my money, my freedom. You've destroyed my life. Isn't that enough? Mrs. McCarthy, the judge said sharply, you were convicted by a jury of your peers based on overwhelming evidence. Evidence collected by a man with every reason to make me look guilty. Martha's voice rose. He's a forensic accountant. He knows how to build a case. What if he planted evidence? What if he manipulated records? Why is no one asking these questions? Because 12 jurors reviewed the evidence and found you guilty beyond reasonable doubt, the judge said coldly. This court will not entertain conspiracy theories. Sit down. Martha remained standing. I want it on the record that I maintain my innocence. I did not try to kill my husband. I did not plan to murder my daughter. And one day, the truth will come out. Sit down. Martha sat, chest heaving. Virginia had her head in her hands. The judge took a moment, visibly composing himself. Then he spoke. Martha McCarthy, you have been convicted of conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, multiple counts of fraud, tax evasion, and identity theft. The evidence presented at trial was not circumstantial. It was overwhelming, corroborated by multiple independent sources, and verified by forensic experts. He paused. Your testimony today, far from showing remorse, demonstrates exactly what the prosecution argued. You take no responsibility for your actions. You blame your husband, your co-conspirator, the justice system, everyone but yourself. You maintain your innocence despite a mountain of evidence, including your own recorded words. Martha's jaw tightened. The federal sentencing guidelines for these crimes call for significant prison time. Given the aggravating factors, the betrayal of family, the vulnerability of the victims, the lengthy premeditation, the complete lack of remorse, this court has no choice. The judge's voice was granite. On the federal charges, I sentence you to 45 years in federal prison, to be served consecutively. On the state charges of attempted murder, I sentence you to 25 years, to be served after the federal sentence is complete. Total sentence, 70 years, with no possibility of parole under federal guidelines. Martha's face went slack. No, you can't. You will be remanded to federal custody immediately. You will have no contact with your daughter except through supervised, court-approved channels, which, given your lack of parental rights, is unlikely. You will pay restitution in the amount of $847,000 to Mr. McCarthy for medical expenses, legal fees, and emotional damages. The gavel fell. Bailiff, remove the defendant. Martha's scream echoed through the courtroom. This is wrong. I'm innocent. Ben, tell them. Tell them I'm innocent. Someone please. The bailiffs hauled her away, her voice fading down the corridor. Ben sat motionless. 70 years. Martha was 34. She'd be over 100 before she saw freedom, if she lived that long. It was over. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Ben gave a brief statement. Justice was served today. My daughter and I can finally move forward with our lives. We're grateful to the legal system, to law enforcement, and to everyone who supported us. Miles drove them home. In the car, Ben's phone rang. Royce Matthews' lawyer. Mr. McCarthy, my client wanted me to pass along a message. He's been sentenced to 15 years. He wanted you to know he's sorry. For all of it. Ben hung up without responding. Chapter 9. A New Beginning. 1 year later, Ben stood in the backyard of their new home, watching Neva laugh as she chased fireflies. She was 10 now, taller, her smile coming more easily. Therapy had helped. Time had helped. Distance from the horror had helped. She still had nightmares sometimes. Still asked questions about why her mother had done what she did. Ben answered honestly, age-appropriately, never lying. Some people are broken inside, he'd tell her. It's not your fault. It was never about you. It was about her and her choices. Neva seemed to accept this. She was resilient like him. Miles had moved out last month, but visited weekly. He'd helped Ben establish routines, create normalcy, be the steady presence Neva needed. Ben would be forever grateful. The house was smaller but warmer. Bright colors, big windows, a swing set in the yard. Nothing like the sterile perfection Martha had insisted on. This house felt like a home. Financially, they were stable. Ben's job had welcomed him back with understanding. The restitution from Martha's dissolved trust fund had covered medical expenses and then some. The civil suit against the life insurance company, who tried to avoid paying after the attempted murder, had been settled in Ben's favor. More importantly, Ben had changed careers. Forensic accounting still, but now he consulted specifically for domestic abuse victims, helping them untangle financial abuse, find hidden assets, build cases against their abusers. He'd helped 8 people in the past year escape dangerous situations. Martha's case had become infamous. The poisoning wife, the media called her. True crime podcast dissected the case. A book deal was in the works. Ben had donated his advance to a domestic violence shelter. Martha herself had been transferred to a federal prison in Texas, far from their state. Ben had heard through the grapevine that she'd dropped the innocent act in prison, become manipulative in different ways, trying to rule her cell block, creating alliances and enemies. She tried to appeal. Every appeal had been denied. She tried to get letters to Neva. Ben had them intercepted by the court-appointed advocate. Neva had the right to read them when she turned 18 if she wanted. For now, she was a child who deserved peace. Royce Matthews was in a federal prison in Nevada. He'd apparently found religion, joined a prayer group, claimed to be reformed. Ben didn't care. 15 years was 15 years. Daddy, Neva ran up, firefly cupped in her hands. Look, I caught one. Ben crouched down, examining the glowing insect. Beautiful. Now, let it go so it can find its family. Neva opened her hands, watching the firefly drift away. Like Mom. Ben's heart clenched. What do you mean? We let her go. She can't hurt us anymore. Neva's voice was matter-of-fact. She's gone, and we're safe. We are safe. Ben pulled her close. We're safe, and we're happy, and we're going to be okay. I know. Neva hugged him tight. Because you're the smartest daddy ever. You protected us. Ben held his daughter as the sun set, fireflies dancing in the growing dark. He thought about the past year, the fear, the betrayal, the careful dismantling of Martha's plans, the way he turned her own greed and arrogance against her. Martha had called him predictable, too nice, an accountant without imagination. She'd been wrong about all of it. Ben McCarthy had been patient, strategic, methodical, qualities she'd mistaken for weakness. He'd gathered evidence, built an ironclad case, and ensured that every person involved in the plot faced consequences. He'd protected his daughter, secured justice, and rebuilt their lives. And he'd done it all without compromising his principles, without becoming the monster Martha had been. Ready for dinner? Miles called from the porch. I made your favorite lasagna. Neva laughed. Real lasagna, not poison lasagna. It was a dark joke, but Ben smiled. Humor was healing. They were allowed to laugh about it now that they were safe. As they walked inside, Neva chattering about her day, Ben glanced back at the yard. The dustbin sat in the corner of the garage, ordinary and unassuming. He'd never forgotten the moment he'd opened it, heart racing, finding the evidence that would save his life. Martha had tried to hide her crimes in the most mundane place, certain Ben would never look. She'd underestimated him. That had been her fatal mistake. Inside, the 3 of them sat down to dinner, Ben, Neva, and Miles. A family, not by Martha's design, but by their own resilience. They said grace, laughed about Miles burning the garlic bread, and made plans for the weekend. Normal, safe, happy. Everything Martha had tried to destroy, Ben had rebuilt better. And as Neva smiled across the table, eyes bright with life and hope, Ben knew that this, right here, right now, was his victory. Not revenge, not destruction, but survival, justice, and the fierce, unbreakable love of a father who'd moved heaven and earth to protect his child. That night, after Neva was asleep and Miles had gone home, Ben sat in his office. On his desk was a letter that had arrived that morning, forwarded by his lawyer. From Martha. It almost thrown it away, but curiosity won out. Ben, I know you won't believe me, but I've had time to think in here. 70 years gives you a lot of time to think. I was wrong, not about being innocent. I still maintain there were circumstances you don't understand. But I was wrong about you. You weren't predictable. You weren't weak. You were patient and smart, and you protected Neva in ways I never could have. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it.